Powder. Oh, yes, you
Folks,
are.
we're about to go live to Dublin on the thing, so if we... Well, we're hopefully about to go live to Dublin.
Running your live stream, please wait for a moment, which should take about 90 seconds. Okay.
Oh, for breakfast? Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Go, I think. Yeah, go. Start.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sydney here. We're about to start our Bloomsday on Bondi celebration. Beautiful sunny day here. We've breakfast tables set out in the balcony and the barbecues are going. We're fighting black pudding and bacon and sausages. So we're all ready to go. Martin Cunningham first poked his silk-hatted head into the creaked carriage and, entering deftly, seated himself. Mr. Power stepped in after him, curving his height with care. Come on, Simon. After you, Mr. Bloom said. Mr. Dedalus covered himself quickly and got in. Yes. Are we all here now? Martin Cunningham asked. Come along, Bloom. Mr. Bloom entered and sat in the vacant place. He pulled the door to after him and slammed it tight till it shut tight. He passed an arm through the arm strap and looked seriously from the open carriage window at the lowered blinds of the avenue. An old woman, nose white flattened against the pane. Thanking her stars, she was passed over. Extraordinary the interest they take in a corpse. Glad to see us go. We give them so much trouble coming. Job seems to suit them. Hugger, mugger in corners. Slop about in slipper slappers for here he'd wait. Then getting it ready. Laying it out. Molly and Mrs. Fleming making the bed. Pull it more to your side. Our winding sheet. Never know who will touch you dead. Wash and shampoo. I believe they clip the nails and the hair. Keep a bit in an envelope. Grows all the same after. All waited. Nothing said. Throwing in the wreaths pocket. I'm sitting on something hard. That soap in my pocket. Better shift opportunity. All waited. Then wheels were heard from in front, turning, then nearer, then horses' hooves. A jolt. Their carriage began to move, creaking and swaying. Other hoops and creaking wheels started behind. The blinds of the avenue passed, and number 9 with its crepe knocked the door ajar at walking pace. They waited still, their knees jogging till they turned and were passing along the tram tracks. Tritonville Road, quicker. The wheels rattled, rolling over the cobbled causeway, and the crazy glasses shut, rattling in the door frame. What way is it taking us? Mr. Power asked through both windows. Irish Town, Martin said. Rings End, Brunswick Street. Mr. Dedalus nodded, looking out. That's a fine old custom, he said. I'm glad to see it hasn't died out. All watched a while through their windows, caps and hats lifted by passers. Respect. The carriage swerved from the tram track to the smoother road past Water Lane. Mr. Bloom at gaze saw a live young man, clad in mourning, a white hat. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said. Who is it? Your son and heir. Where is he? Mr. Dedalus said, stretching over across. The carriage passing the open doors of ripped roadway before the tenement houses lurched round the corner and, swerving back to the tram track, rolled on noisily with chattering wheels. Mr. Dedalus fell back, saying, Was that Mulligan cad with him? No, Mr. Bloom said. He was alone. Down with his Aunt Sally, I suppose, Mr. Dedalus said. The Goulding faction, the drunken little Costor and Chrissy, Papa's little lump of dung, the wise child that knows her own father. Mr. Bloom smiled joylessly on Ringsend Road. Wallace Brothers, the Bottle Works, Dodder Bridge. Richie Goulding and the legal bag. Goulding, Collis and Ward, he calls the firm. His jokes are getting a bit damp. Great card he was, waltzing in Stamer Street with Ignatius Gallagher on a Sunday morning, the landlady's 2 hats pinned on his head. Out on the rampage all night. Beginning to tell on him now. That backache of his, I fear. Wife, ironing his back. Thinks he'll cure it with pills. All breadcrumbs they are. About 600% profit. He's in with a low-down crowd, Mr. Dedalus snarled. That Mulligan is a contaminated, bloody, double-eyed ruffian by all accounts. His name stinks all over Dublin. But with the help of God and his blessed mother, I'll make it my business to write a letter one of those days to his mother or his aunt or whatever she is that will open her eyes as wide as a gate. I'll tickle his catastrophe, believe you me, he cried above the clatter of the wheels. I won't have her bastard of a nephew ruin my son, a counter-jumper's son, selling tapes in my cousin Peter Paul McSweeney's. Not likely. He ceased. Mr. Bloom glanced from his angry moustache to Mr. Power's mild face and Martin Cunningham's eyes and beard, gravely shaking. Noisy, self-willed man, full of his son. He is right, something to hand on, if little Rudy had lived. See him grow up, hear his voice in the house, walking beside Molly in an Eton suit. My son, me in his eyes. Strange feeling it would be, from me, just a chance. Must have been that morning in Raymond Terrace she was at the window, watching the two dogs at it by the wall of the crease to do evil, and the sergeant grinning up. She had that cream gown on with the rip she never stitched. Give us a touch, Poldy. God, I'm dying for it. How life begins. Got big then. Had to refuse the Greystones concert. My son inside her. I could have helped him on in life. I could. Make him independent. Learn German too. Are we late? Mr. Power asked. 10 minutes, Martin Cunningham said, looking at his watch. Molly, Millie, same thing, watered down. Her tomboy oats, oh, jumping Jupiter, ye gods and little fishes. Still, she's a dear girl. Soon be a woman. Mullingar, dearest Papley, young student. Yes, yes, a woman too. Life, life. The carriage heeled over and back, their four trunks swaying. Corny might have given us a more commodious yoke, Mr. Power said. He might, Mr. Dedalus said, if he hadn't that squint troubling him. Do you follow me?
He closed his left eye. Cunningham began to brush away crust crumbs from under his thighs. What is this? He said. In the name of God, crumbs? Someone seems to be making a picnic party here lately, Power said. All raised their thighs, eyed with disfavour the mildewed buttonless leather of the seats. Mr. Dedalus, twisting his nose, frowned downward and said, Unless I'm greatly mistaken, what do you think, Martin? It struck me too, Martin Cunningham said. Mr. Bloom set his thigh down. Glad I took that bath. Feel my feet quite clean. But I wish Mrs. Fleming had darned these socks better. Mr. Dedalus signed resignedly. After all, he said, it's the most natural thing in the world. Did Tom Kernan turn up? Martin Cunningham asked, twirling the peaks of his beard gently. Yes, Mr. Bloom answered. He's behind, with Ned Lambert and Hines. And Corny Keller himself? Mr. Power asked. At the cemetery, Martin Cunningham said. I met McCoy this morning, Mr. Bloom said. He said he'd try to come. The carriage halted short. What's wrong? We're stopped. Where are we? Mr. Bloom put his head out the window. The Grand Canal, he said. Gasworks. Whooping cough, they say it cures. Good job Millie never got it. Poor children. Doubles them up black and blue in convulsions. Shame, really. Got off lightly with illness compared. Only measles, flaxseed tea, scarlatina, influenza epidemics, canvassing for death. Doesn't miss the chance. Dog's home. Poor old apples. Be good to apples, Leopold, is my last wish. Thy will be done. We obey them in the grave. A dying scrawl. He took it to heart. Pined away, quiet brute. Old men's dogs usually are. A raindrop spat on his hat. He drew back and saw an instant a shower sprayed dots over the grey flag. Heart. I thought it would. My boots were creaking. I remember now. The weather is changing, he said, quietly. A pity it did not keep up fine, Martin Cunningham said. Wanted for the country, Mr. Power said. There's the sun again, coming out. Mr. Dedalus, peering through his glasses towards the veiled sun, hurled a mute curse at the sky. It's as uncertain as a child's bottom, he said. We're off again. The carriage turned again, its stiff wheels and their trunks swayed gently. Martin Cunningham twirled more quickly the peak of his beard. Tom Kernan was immense last night, he said, and Paddy Leonard taking him off to his face. Oh, draw him out, Martin, Mr. Power said eagerly. Wait till you hear him, Simon, on Ben Dollard's singing of the Croppy Boy. Immense, Martin Cunningham said pompously. His singing that simple ballad. Martin, it's the most trenchant rendering I ever heard in the whole course of my experience. Trenchant, Mr. Power said, laughing. He's dead nuts on that, and the retrospective arrangement. Did you read Dan Dawson's speech? Martin Cunningham asked. I did not then, Mr. Dedalus said. Where is it? In the paper this morning. Mr. Bloom took the paper from his inside pocket. That book, I must change for her. No, Mr. Dedalus said quickly. Later on, please. Mr. Bloom's glance travelled down the edge of the paper, scanning the deaths. Callan, Coleman, Dignam, Fawcett, Lowry, Nauman, Peake. What Peake is that? Is it the chap was in Crosby and Allen's? No, Sexton, Urbright. Inked characters fast fading on the frayed breaking paper. Thanks to the little flower, sadly missed, to the inexpressible grief of his, aged 88 after a long and tedious illness. Month's mine, Quinlan, on whose soul, sweet Jesus, have mercy. 'Tis now a month since Henry fled to his home up above the sky, while his family weeps and mourns his loss, hoping some day to meet him on high. I tore up the envelope. Yes, where did I put her letter after I read it in the bath? He patted his waistcoat pocket. There, all right. Dear Henry fled. For my patients are exhausted. Needs yard. The hazard. Only 2 there now. Nodding, full as a tick. Too much bone in their skulls. The other trotting around with a fare. An hour ago I was passing there. The Jarvies raised their hats. A pointsman back straightened itself upright suddenly against a tramway standard by Mr. Bloom's window. Could they invent something automatic so that the wheel itself much handler? Well, but then a fellow could lose his job then. Well, but then another fellow would get a job making the new invention. Ancient dreams. Nothing on there. A man in a buff suit with a crepe armlet. Not much grief there. Quarter morning. People in law, perhaps. They went past the bleak pulpit of St. Mark's, under the railway bridge, past the Queen's Theatre, in silence. Hoardings, Eugene Stratton, Mrs. Badman Palmer. Could I go to see Leah tonight, I wonder? I said, aye. Or the Lily of Killarney, Elster Grimes Opera Company. Big, powerful change. Wet, bright bills for next week. Fun on the Bristol. Martin Cunningham could work a pass for the Gaiety. Have to stand a drink or two. As broad as it's long. He's coming in the afternoon. There's songs. Plasto's Sir Philip Crampton's memorial fountain bust. Who was he? How do you do? Martin Cunningham said, raising his palm to his brow in salute. He doesn't see us, Mr. Power said. Oh, yes, he does. How do you do? Who? Mr. Dedalus said. Blazes Boylan, Mr. Power said. There he is, airing his quip.
Just that moment, I was thinking. Mr. Dedalus bent across to salute. From the door of the Red Bank, the red-white disc of a straw hat flashed reply. Passed. Mr. Bloom reviewed the nails of his left hand, then those of his right hand. The nails? Yes. Is there anything more in him that he sees? Fascination. Worst man in Dublin. That keeps him alive. They sometimes feel what a person is. Instinct. But a type like that. My nails. I am just looking at them. Well, and after, thinking alone. Body getting a bit saucy. I would notice that from remembering. What causes that? I suppose the skin can't contract quickly enough when the flesh falls off. But the shape is there. The shape is there still. Shoulders, hips, plump. Night of the dress fancy. Shift stuck between the cheeks behind. He clasped his hands between his knees. and satisfied, sent his vacant glance over their faces. Mr. Power asked, "How is the concert tour getting on, Bloom?" "Oh, very well," Bloom said. "I hear great accounts of it. It's a good idea, you see." "Are you going yourself?" "Well, no," Mr. Bloom said. "In point of fact, I have to go down to the county fair on some private business. You see, the idea is to tour the chief towns. What you lose on one, you can make up on the other." "Quite so," Martin Cunningham said. "Barry Anderson is up there now. Have you good artists?" "Louis Werner is touring her," Mr. Bloom said. "Oh yes, we'll have all top nobbers, J.C. Doyle and John McCormack, I hope, and the best, in fact." "And Madame," Mr. Power said, smiling, last but not least. Mr. Bloom unclasped his hands in a gesture of soft politeness and clasped them. "Smith O'Brien. Someone has laid a bunch of flowers there. Woman. Must be his stepdad. For many happy returns." The carriage wheeling by Pharaoh's statue united noiselessly their unresisting knees. "Out!" A dull-garbed old man from the curbstone tendered his wares, his mouth opening. "Out! 4 bootlaces for a penny." Wonder why he was struck off the roads. Had his office in Hume Street. Same house as Molly's namesake. Tweedy Crown solicitor for Waterford. Has that still cat ever since? Relics of old decency. Morning, too. Terrible come down, poor wretch. Kicked about like snuffed away. O'Callaghan on his last legs. And Madame, 11:20, up. Mrs. Fleming is in to clean. Doing her hair. Coming. Voglio e non vorrei. No, vorrei e non. At the tips of her hairs to see if they're split. Mi trema un poco il. Beautiful on that tray, her voice is. Weeping tone. A thrust. A throttle. There's a word. Throstle that expressed that. His eyes passed lightly over Mr. Power's good-looking face. Grayish over the ears. Madam smiling. I smiled back. A smile goes a long way. Politeness, perhaps. Nice fellow. Who knows? Is that true about the woman he keeps? Not pleasant for the wife. Yet they say, who was it told me, there is no carnal. You'd imagine they would get played out pretty quick. Yes, it was Crofton met him one evening, bringing her a pound of rump steak. What is this she was? Barmaid in Jury's. Or the Moira, was it? They passed under the huge cloak Liberator's form. Martin Cunningham nudged Mr. Power. Of the tribe of Reuben, he said. A tall, black-bearded figure, bent on a stick, stumping round the corner of Elvery's elephant house, showed them a curved hand open on his spine. In all his pristine beauty, Mr. Power said. Mr. Dedalus looked after the stumping figure and said mildly, "The devil break the house for your back." Mr. Power, collapsing in laughter, shaded his face from the window as the carriage passed Gray's statue. "We've all been there," Martin Cunningham said broadly. His eyes met Mr. Bloom's eyes. He caressed his beard, adding, "Well, nearly all of us." Mr. Bloom began to speak with sudden eagerness to his companions' faces. "That's an awfully good one that's going the rounds about Reuben Day and the Sun." "About the boatman?" Mr. Power asked. "Yes, isn't it awfully good?" "What is that?" Mr. Dedalus asked. I didn't hear it. There was a girl in the case, Mr. Bloom began, and he determined to send her to the Isle of Man out of harm's way. But when they were both, what? Mr. Dedalus asked. That confirmed bloody hobbledehoy, is it? Yes, Mr. Bloom said. They were both on the way to the boat, and he tried to drown. Drown Barabbas? Mr. Dedalus cried. I wish to Christ he did. Mr. Power sent a long laugh down his shaded nostrils. No, Mr. Bloom said, the son himself. Martin Cunningham thwarted his speech rudely. Reuben J and the son were piping it down the quay next the river on their way to the Isle of Man boat, and the young chiseler suddenly got loose and over the wall with them into the liffey. Oh, for God's sake, Mr. Dedalus exclaimed in fright. Is he dead? Dead, Martin Cunningham cried. Not he. A boatman got a pole and fished him out by the slack of the breeches, and he was landed up to the father on the quay. More dead than alive. Half the town was there. Yes, Mr. Bloom said, but the funny part is... And Reuben J, Martin Cunningham said, gave the boatman a florin for saving his son's life. A stifled cry came from under Mr. Power's hand. Oh, he did, Martin Cunningham affirmed, like a hero, a silver florin. Isn't it awfully good, Mr. Bloom said eagerly. 1 and 8pence too much, Mr. Dedalus said dryly. Mr. Power's choked laugh burst quietly in the carriage. Nelson's pillar. 8 plums a penny, 8 for a penny. We had better look a little serious, Martin Cunningham said. Mr. Dedalus sighed. And then indeed, he said, poor little Paddy wouldn't grudge us a laugh.
The Lord forgive me, Mr. Power said, wiping his wet eyes with his fingers. Poor Paddy. And I little thought a week ago when I saw him last, and he was in his usual health, that I'd be driving after him like this. He's gone from us. Breakdown, Martin Cunningham said. Heart. He tapped his chest sadly. Blazing face. Red hot, too much John Barleycorn. Cure for a red nose. Drink like the devil till it turns Adelaide. A lot of money to spend colouring it. Mr. Power gazed at the passing houses with rueful apprehension. He had a sudden death, poor fellow, he said. The best death, Mr. Bloom said. Their wide, open eyes looked at him. No suffering, he said. A moment and all is over, like dying in sleep. No one spoke. Dead side of the street, this. Dull business by day, land agents, temperance hotel, Falconer's Railway Guide, Civil Service College, Guilds, Catholic Club, the Industrial Blind. Why? Some reason, sun or wind. At night too. Chummies and slavies under the patronage of the late Father Martin. Foundation stone for Parnell. Breakdown. White horses with plumes came round from the corner galloping. A tiny coffin flashed by him. In a hurry to bury. A mourning coach. Unmarried. Black for the married, piebald for bachelors, done for a nun. Sad, Martin Cunningham said. A child. A dwarf's face, mauve and wrinkled like glue. Dwarf's body, weak as putty in a white-lined deal box. Burial friendly society pays. Penny a week for the solid turf. Our little beggar baby. Nothing. Mistake of nature. If it's healthy, it's from the mother. If not, the man. Better luck next time. Poor little thing is well out of it. The carriage climbed more slowly the hill of Rutland Square. Rattle his bones over the stones. Only a pauper nobody owns. In the midst of life, Martin Cunningham said. The worst of all, Mr. Power said, is the man who takes his own life. Martin Cunningham drew his watch out briskly, coughed and put it back. The greatest disgrace to have in the family, Mr. Power. Temporary insanity, of course, Martin Cunningham said decisively. We must take a charitable view. They say a man who does it is a coward, Mr. Daedalus said. But it's not for us to judge, Martin Cunningham said. Mr. Bloom, about to speak, closed his lips again. Martin Cunningham's large eyes, looking away now. Pathetic human man he is. Intelligent. Like Shakespeare's face. Always a good word to say. They've no mercy on that here, or infanticide. Refuse Christian burial. To drive a stake in the grave. Wasn't broken already. Yet sometimes they repent too late. Found in the riverbed, clutching rushes. He looked up at me, and that is time after time, and then pawning the furniture on them every Saturday almost, leading him to life of the damned. Stone that. Monday morning, start afresh. Shoulders of a stone. Lord, she must have looked aside that night. Davis told me he was there, drunk about the place and capering with Martin's umbrella. And they called me the Jewel of Asia, Big Asia. And he looked away from me. He rattled his bones. That afternoon of the inquest, the red-labelled bottle on the table, the room in the hotel with hunting pictures, stuffy it was, sunlight through the slats of the Venetian blinds, the coroner's ears big and hairy, boots giving evidence. Thought he was asleep first, then saw like yellow streaks on his feet and slipped down the foot. Verdict, overdose, death by misadventure. The letter. Leopold. No more pain, wake no more. Nobody owns. The carriage rattled swiftly along Blessington Street over the stones. We are going the pace, I think, Martin Cunningham said. God grant he doesn't upset us on the road, Mr. Power said. Well, I hope not, Martin Cunningham said. There will be a great race tomorrow in Germany. The Gordon Bennett. Yes, by Jove, Mr. Davis. That'll be worth seeing fit. As they turned into Berkeley Street, a street near the basin, over and after them, a rolling, rattling song of the halls. Has anybody here seen K-E-double-L-Y? So, he's as bad as old Antonio. He left me on my own, old pirouette. The matter, Misericordiae, Eccles Street. My house down there. Big place. Ward for incurables there. Very encouraging. Our Lady's Hospice for the dying. Dead house handy underneath. Where old Mrs. Reardon died. They looked terrible, the women. Her feeding cup and rubbing them out with a spoon. Then the screen around her bed for her to die. Nice young student that was dressed that bite the bee gave me. He's gone over to the lying-in hospital, they told me. From one extreme to the other. The carriage galloped around the corner, stopped. What's wrong now? A drove of branded cattle past the window, lowing, slouching by on padded hoofs, whisking their tails slowly on their clotted, bony croups. Outside them and through them ran raddled sheep, bleating their fear. Immigrants, Mr. Power said. Who? The driver's voice cried, his switch sounding on their flanks. Who? Out of that! Thursday, of course. Tomorrow is killing day. Springers. Cup sold them about 27 quid each. Probably. Roast beef for old people. They buy up all the juicy ones. And then the fifth quarter's lost. All that raw stuff, hide, hair, horns. Comes to a big thing in a year. The meat trade. Buy products from the slaughterhouses for tanneries, soap, margarine. Wonder if that Dodge works down now getting dicky meat off the trade at Consulate. The carriage moved on through the drove. That's it from us here in Sydney. Glad to be part of it. Have a great day in Dublin. God bless. Bye.
Thanks for that.
Not a problem, George. Thank you.
There ended up in the end there being a delay of about 5 minutes. There ended up through the keeping the real being a delay of about 5 minutes. So I have to keep this running for the next 5 minutes to capture all of what you said before I hit stop. Alright,
Good man.
go get some breakfast.
Thank you.